Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming today. Just a little background info about all of us. I'm Drew Willis. I'm the creative director of Time for Kids, Time Edge, and HerMoney magazine. I've worked in children's publishing for 19 years, and I've illustrated numerous YA books, including Hatchet, which PBS's Great American Read listed among the 100 best books of all time recently. And I'm also the recipient of a Chesley Award for Science Fiction Illustration. And I'm joined by Tiffany Aliche, the founder and CEO of the Budgetnista. Pause for applause, yeah. She is a financial educator and recently helped to write Law A1414, which people call the Budgetnista Law, making it mandatory for middle school children to learn financial literacy in her home state of New Jersey. Tiffany leads a powerful virtual community of over 700,000 women, the Dream Catchers, from 100+ countries on their financial journeys. She also blogs about personal finance for the Huffington Post, co-hosts an award-winning podcast, Brown Ambition, and has an online school called the Live Richer Academy that teaches women how to achieve financial freedom. I'd also like to introduce Jean Chatzky. Jean launched HerMoney Media and HerMoney.com in 2018 to provide women with information about the money they can actually trust. She's an award-winning financial editor of NBC Today and has also appeared on shows including Oprah, MSNBC, CNN, The View, The Talk, and many others. Millions have turned into her podcast, Her Money, with Jean Chatzky, which has received shout-outs from the New York Times, Yahoo Finance, and Refinery29. Jean is also the best-selling author of 11 books, an in-demand motivational speaker, AARP's financial ambassador, and a fierce advocate for financial literacy. In 2015, she partnered with PwC Charitable Foundation and Time for Kids to launch HerMoney magazine to teach financial literacy to elementary school children. And finally, Andrea Delbanco. She's the editorial director of Time Education, which is a division of Time magazine. And in this role, she serves as editor-in-chief of 4 weekly editions of Time for Kids, a magazine for elementary school students, and Time Edge, a new website for middle school students. TFK has been a trusted source of information for millions of American school children since 1995. And in addition to managing the editorial and educational teams at TFK, she oversees HerMoney magazine. So, this is what everyone's here to talk about, financial literacy and the importance of educating future generations about money. So the question is, why is financial literacy such an important subject to teach? And I think Jean has some answers about that.
Oh, boy, I don't think of, can you all hear me? Yes, okay. I don't think of financial literacy as a financial skill. I think of it as a life skill. We are, all of us as adults, so much more responsible for our personal finances than any generation that came before us. We've got to fund our own retirement plans. We've got to pay for our own health care in many cases. We're not sure that Social Security and Medicare are going to be around to support us. And our kids have it even worse. They are going to have more responsibility than we do. And yet we're not teaching them how to handle it. We know from the research that we've done with Time for Kids that teachers don't feel as if they're qualified to teach it. A lot of surveys have shown that parents don't feel qualified to teach it. And if you look at the statistics that are on your screen right now, you can see why, right? I mean, if you're a parent and you don't have $400 set aside to cover an emergency, you're not going to feel qualified to teach your kids anything about this. And so we're stuck in this vortex where nobody is stepping up in a big way with a national mandate to give kids the education that they need. Instead, we're piecemealing it together in states like Tiffany's Victory and like our Time for Kids Your Money project, which I love. But we're struggling.
Yeah. Tiffany, you want to add something?
Well, everyone becomes an adult, God willing. And so when do you start to learn about money? So what happens is that typically around the age of 3 or 4, children, so I used to be a preschool teacher for over 10 years, so I've got a lot of experience with 3 and 4-year-olds. So typically around that age is when a child starts to say, can you buy me? Not can I have, not can you give me, but can you buy me? It means they start to make the distinction between money and things, and that there's an exchange happening. So the 3 or 4-year-old that's never told, how money works, sometimes becomes the 10-year-old that's never told, then the 15-year-old that doesn't know how to manage their allowance, then the 25-year-old, then the 30-year-old that never leaves their parents' house. And nobody wants that, right? And so it has to start somewhere. That's why financial education is so critical. It's because you have to normalize the conversation. When does it become appropriate to teach children about money? And honestly, to me, it's appropriate when they start asking for it. And so the earlier we can start, the better.
Nice. Overall, what are the most important things children and adults need to know about managing money? Tiffany, you want to answer that one?
Well, to start, especially for when you're just starting out, it's one, the flow of money. How does it work, right? So we're talking about children, but adults as well. So one of the activities I used to do for my children in the classroom was that they would ask me to purchase things for them, but they didn't know where it came from because they didn't understand that money was not magically generated from my purse. One little boy used to actually tell me, Miss Tiffany, just go to the wall. And I didn't know for the longest time what he meant until we went on a walk and there was an ATM. He's like, oh, the wall. You know? So I realized, yes, and I thought, wow, because to a kid, that must seem magical. You punch some numbers in on the wall, money comes out, we buy whatever we want. So the flow, so almost every preschool classroom has a job chart where kids are like putting away blocks or helping to set the table. So I thought, well, what if I actually made the job chart make sense for them and start paying them? We paid them monopoly money for the jobs on their job chart. And then they created their own bank accounts with shoeboxes. So that way they would get paid if they did a great job, $2. If they did an okay job, $1. If they didn't do their job at all, no dollars. They would put the money in their savings accounts, which was their shoebox, and then every 2 weeks they could use their money or some of it to shop at the school store. So they understood the flow. So instead of, Miss Tiffany, can you buy me? It became, Miss Tiffany, can you go get a job, work really hard, then buy me the thing I want?
Right.
You know, so I would say for students as well as adults, budgeting, savings, and really the flow of money. So the basics are critical.
And Jean, for adults, what do you think the most important thing is?
So first of all, I had that same experience with my daughter in the car where I had said to her I didn't have money to buy whatever it was that she was asking for, and she said, well, just go get some from the machine. And I realized I had to teach her that even though she didn't see me putting money into the machine, when I did work, it went in through direct deposit, and it's a problem that funds flow so invisibly these days, and things like Venmo are making it easier, but a lot worse.
Yeah.
Right.
What do adults need to know? Adults need to know, really, when it comes down to it, 5 things. I mean, if we can do 5 things habitually, then we can have a successful life, and most of us don't get past the second one on the list, unfortunately. So we need to earn money, right? We need to earn a decent living. Doesn't have to be exorbitant in order to make us happy. It just has to be enough to make us comfortable. A lot of research has shown that happiness actually tails off after that level of comfortability. We need to spend less than we make on a continual basis. That's where people fall apart. We need to take whatever we're not spending and invest it so that it works for us to keep us ahead of taxes and inflation. We have to use things like insurance and wills wisely to make sure that we're protected, that no big or small disaster can come along and take all this hard work away from us. And we have to give back in some way that is meaningful to us, because nothing else really gives us the same kind of a psychic boost. But the problem, and I do think it starts with not understanding the flows, is that people fall apart at step 2. And to get these lessons into the minds of children in a way that they resonate, we have to get money into the hands of children. And it's great in the classroom when it's fake money, but at home it has to be real money, and it has to come with a list of things that parents are no longer willing to buy. I think, and I don't know if you agree, Tiffany, but I think that the most important things kids need to know about money are A, that they're a limited resource, and B, that they have to choose. And really it's all about teaching choices, and that if you make one choice, you may not be able to have a do-over. So you have to make wise choices throughout your life.
And to your point, I can remember one of the first financial choices that I made was, I think I was turning 10 and I wanted a bike for my birthday. And my father was doing the bills. He was an accountant, so he had this really great calculator with the paper coming out of the bag, so we all were fascinated by it. So he was doing the bills at the dining room table, which is probably not the best time to ask for a bike for your birthday. And so I remember, saying, Daddy, my birthday's coming up and I would like a bike. And he said, okay, well, before I get you a bike, you have to help me pay some bills. And so I didn't know if I had to get a job. I didn't know what that meant, but it meant that he was adding up the family's expenses. And for the first time, it never dawned on me that they spent money on things other than cookies, cakes, and whatever I wanted, that they were expenses. And so I didn't know that there was a mortgage and you paid for it every month. I thought you bought a house the way you bought a shirt one time. I knew about the light bill because what kid doesn't get yelled at for keeping the lights on, And so I was adding up the family's expenses, and then he showed me what he and my mother made. I didn't have a concept if they made a little or a lot, but I did know less and more. And so as I was subtracting the expenses from what they made, I realized, wow, the number is getting lower. And so the light bulb went on for the first time, to your point, Jane, about spending real money. I thought, wow, this is real money. And what was left over, there was money left over, but he explained, I'm one of 5 girls, that all of the money can't go to you. Some of it has to be saved. Some of it has to be invested. And you have sisters, which that was the least of my worries. It's not their birthday. And so when it was all said and done, for the first time, I made a financial choice based upon not just what I wanted, but what we were able to do. And so there was a choice between this really cute little Barbie bike that was just my size and this big blue ugly bike from Sears. And I wanted the cute purple Barbie bike, but I realized that if I bought it that year, I was gonna grow out of it. And I never cared about growing out of things before, because you just get another one. But I thought, I'm gonna grow out of this bike in a year, and then I'm gonna have to get another bike, but what if I want a camera for my birthday when I'm 11? And so I chose the big blue ugly bike, and that bike, I rode that bike all the way through college. My dad still rides, he's in his 70s, he rides it for exercise. I never had another bike, but it's just such a lesson in how you can really make these lessons really tangible for your children, and they can be super meaningful when it's real, beyond the monopoly money, making these lessons real for your kids.
Yeah, speaking on that, so let's talk about the challenge of educating children. Usually what happens is the adults, both teachers and parents, feel that they don't know enough about how to teach finances. They need support to build confidence. So Jean, do you think you could talk about how they get that kind of confidence, or what kind of resources they could use?
Sure. Well, actually, maybe Andrea can talk about it.
Oh, sure.
Because what we try to do with Time for Kids and with Time for Kids Your Money is to provide the sort of support in the form of a parent's guide and a teacher's guide, so that you don't have to, I don't remember who said this, some really, really smart person said this, I am not making this up.
It wasn't me.
But that I think it might have been my mother, who was teaching college statistics, and she said she didn't have to know the entire course. She just needed to know enough to teach the next lesson and to stay one step ahead of her students. And I think that's the attitude we have to take with parents, and in some cases teachers, who feel overwhelmed by this subject matter, and teach them a little bit to allow them to feel smart enough to pass the lessons along.
Right, so with Time for Kids and with Time for Kids Your Money magazine, what we aim to do is provide teachers, who are the ones who purchase the magazine for their students, with all of the resources that they need to teach all of the lessons that we bring into their classrooms, all of the topics. And the goal is for them to get a curriculum guide that comes with it, that gives them background information, lesson plans at different lengths, vocabulary, extra facts and figures, and worksheets that they can reproduce and use, so that we're not putting them in a position of having to do any extra work or research around a topic. For Time for Kids, for our weekly magazine, we cover all sorts of different current events, and so the assumption there is that neither teachers nor students have the background information or context off the top of their head. For Your Money, we take that challenge even more seriously, because we realize that teachers want to feel like if the information they present in that magazine leads to a natural conversation, and kids have more questions and they want to extend their learning. We know teachers want to feel the support that they can actually go beyond just what's in front of them. And I have to say, I'm not a teacher, but as a parent, I really relate to that. I think I'm not super confident in this area. My confidence has grown over the last 4 years of working on this magazine, but I do know that sometimes it's hard to initiate conversations with my kids about something where I have only a base level of knowledge, because their natural curiosity will take it into several other different directions, and it always makes me feel uncomfortable to have to sort of opt out at that point and be like, ask Alexa or your father or whatever. So with Your Money magazine, we really try and give teachers a good depth of resources around it.
Yeah. Speaking about that, can we talk a little bit about how children learn about abstract concepts, including money?
Yes, so that's a big challenge for us in Time for Kids and with Your Money magazine, is trying to answer the question, the basic question that we kind of always start with, which is, will this interest children? Why does it matter to them? How do we make it come alive for them, even if it doesn't impact them in any way? And how can we help them feel a sense of agency with whatever topic it is that we are addressing? So for abstract concepts, that's always much more challenging. In Time for Kids, we're usually covering the news of the week or amazing things that kids are doing or something more concrete. But it's been very challenging with Your Money to figure out how to make concepts that are pretty theoretical come to life for children. And so one of the things that we've really learned to do is to find a story or an anecdote or something very concrete that we can build as a through line with the story that we're telling and build in the concepts around it. So when we talk about entrepreneurship, which we'll talk about a little more later, we'll find somebody who's doing something super cool and focus on that, rather than explaining, you have an idea, this is how you build that idea and monetize it. That's not going to really mean anything to children. So we take a lot of pains to make sure that we find something that actually comes alive for them.
I think it's been hard, because kids want to know things like, why does this cost what it costs,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's a wild, big, outside concept that they deal with on commodities trading floors every single day. And we have these story idea meetings where we try to figure out, okay, this is something that we should all know. So that was something we ended up just getting into with the price of orange juice. Right? The orange juice had been, the price had been going like this because of hurricanes and because of natural disasters around the world, and we were able to use it to drill down and talk about just this very basic concept of, why does something cost what it costs, and then bring in other things and why they cost what they cost.
And another challenge that we face, which I'm sure many of you face in your classroom every day, is that we have such students with such different backgrounds and such differentiated levels of learning and such different circumstances, that for us, creating a magazine that's about money and about managing money for millions of kids who come from all different socioeconomic backgrounds has been also challenging. We want to make sure that we are addressing them at the level that feels relevant and comfortable for their family, but obviously that's not one size fits all. So we've had to really get creative about the ways that we present information that is aspirational and teaches them best practices without really missing the mark on what the reality is for most of their home lives.
Yeah. So fun is one thing, effective is something else. What do we know about how well these kinds of things work, and where is the line between fun and effective?
Right, so with Time for Kids, we've been publishing since 1995, and we've had a lot of years to do research around efficacy. We also have teacher assessments for the teachers who are using it in their classrooms. They can do assessments of their students' comprehension and learning. With Your Money, it's been a different challenge because we've only been doing it for 4 years, and it's also harder to prove out how learning concepts now in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade will impact their future management of money, right? That's going to take a long-term study. So what we try and balance is finding the fun to make it engaging. That, for us, that's mission critical, because our magazine is a supplemental material. It helps teachers teach to standards. It's core curriculum aligned. But what we really want is for kids to be excited when they get Time for Kids and Your Money, because otherwise why would a teacher want to introduce that lesson? So we really strive to make it fun. We really want to make it feel relevant and interesting to them, but we need to know that it's moving the needle. And so we really look to teachers. We do a lot of research with them and get feedback from them. And you can see on the screen some of the survey responses that we've had over the last years have been very consistent. And they show that use of Your Money magazine in the classroom has inspired teachers to have more conversations with their students and has inspired students to want to learn more about many of the concepts that we really have to push forward as often as we can, as frequently as we can, and that are very important to us and to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, one of the problems with trying to get financial literacy into the classroom, and Tiffany can certainly talk to this more, is that teachers who are so stressed about all the various tests that they have to equip their students to pass often find that there isn't room for anything else. And so although we have this very robust set of financial literacy standards at 4th grade and at 8th grade, and we have incorporated those into the development of this magazine, we're really aware that teachers may look at that and say, we still don't have room. And so what we've tried to do is turn these not just into finance lessons, but their math lessons and their English lessons and vocabulary lessons and history lessons. And I think that has helped get pickup, for lack of a better word, on the subject, because teachers can give a Your Money worksheet as math homework.
I was going to say that part is integral because I worked in New Jersey, I know we'll cover it later, to get a law passed to make financial education mandatory for, really I wanted elementary through middle school because New Jersey already has a law for high school. And so we met with the education committee and superintendents and teachers, and myself being a teacher, I already knew what the pushback was going to be because it was a pushback when I was in the classroom. When? You already have me doing everyday math, you have me doing this literacy program, that when in the day am I supposed to fit this in? And so really it helped to reshape the language of the law to talk about integration versus setting apart a time in the day to say, it's financial literacy time, right. Because it's too much. And so to me, maybe I'm biased, but to me the best teaching is happening in preschool and kindergarten classrooms because those teachers are not looking to force students to meet them where the class ought to be, and instead you're meeting the child where they are. So there's a child in my classroom, they only like the block area, but they still have to learn how to add and subtract and colors and shapes. So I would bring the colors to the block area and let's talk about different colors of blocks. We'll bring, writing material to the block area and let's write the name of the building that you're creating. And so I love that that's what, Time for Kids is doing with Your Money is that, to be able to bring that to where kids are already. You're already going to do literacy homework and math homework and art homework. Why not infuse financial education into it versus creating a separate time for financial education?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, Tiffany, about when it should be incorporated in the classroom, and you could probably expand a little bit about your book and what, how that ties into that.
Honestly, it should start right away. It should start in preschool because, like I said, that's when the conversation starts to switch from kids asking you, can you buy me, from can you have to can you buy me. So being a teacher for so long, I didn't find the books that I wanted when it related to financial education in the classroom that was age appropriate. So most books for preschoolers, when it comes to money, this is $1. Which is fine, this is 50 cents. So that's what the book was about. But kids learn best with stories. Storytelling is just such a powerful tool for students, especially younger students. And so I set out to create my own series of books that were gonna lay the foundation of what I call pre-financial and financial lessons. So this first book is about this beautiful little girl named Molly. And I wanted to teach kids about how much was enough. So it doesn't seem directly financial, but in this book, this is the first book, it's her birthday, and she is, at first, she's super excited that her family and friends are coming over, but throughout the book, there's a rhyme in the book that goes, each time a new guest comes to the door, More, says Molly, more. So it's not just financial education, because one, rhyming is a precursor to counting, which is a precursor to financial education. So a rhyming book, is setting the stage for financial education. But then two, you start to realize that throughout the book that she's getting more stuff, but less people can actually fit in her house where she's supposed to have fun. So it's time for her to blow out the candles. There's nobody there, and she realizes that more stuff has actually created less of what she really wants. And so this is just a great tool that you can use as a teacher. Maybe you have a student that's not really great at sharing. Sharing is a precursor to financial education. They're not good at donating. They're not good at community. They're not good at, so these are also precursors to financial education. And so I just thought that there should be, so not a book that preaches, but really books that set the foundation for why we're struggling as adults, right? Maybe, Jean, you mentioned earlier, maybe you're not giving, maybe you're not earning, maybe you're not being really like a responsible member of your community. And so at the end of each book, there's lesson plans as well as extension questions, because if you are, as a parent or a teacher, are not comfortable extending the lesson, you don't have to figure it out on your own. You can sit down your classroom or your child. Like, for example, one of the lesson plans in here is to have the children or your child clean out their bedroom or their classroom, and then donate some of the toys to other children who might not otherwise have access. So then it opens up a whole conversation about what donating is and why it's important. And so I'm really excited about it. And I just think that she's just so adorable.
She's so cute. She's so cute. And I love that it's not a lesson that's banging you over the head. We get asked a lot, what are the best financial literacy games? Well, Monopoly. It's the game of life. It's the games that exist that are actually fun. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be a packaged lesson.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's just important that kids feel. I mean, you learn through living, And so I can't tell you how many children, first day of school, they've never been in school before, and I pulled out. There's this little book about a mouse. I forget who.
If you give a mouse a cookie?
No, it's about a mouse in their first day of school. I can't remember.
Oh,
I'm sure
Lily?
I'm like, yes.
Lily and the
Maybe, but I can't. But it was my favorite go-to book, because she was worried in school. She was worried. The mouse in the book was worried that they wouldn't make friends. And at the end, you see the mouse really enjoyed school. And so you can kind of see the realization of like, this mouse relates to me and how I'm feeling. And so it's just such a great way for children to see themselves outside themselves through story. And so that's why I just love the work that you guys are doing, because it's critical. And the earlier you start, the better. I think people think that it's inappropriate to talk to children about money. Honestly, I think it's inappropriate not to. Yeah. It's the reason why we struggle now.
Yeah. Speaking of classrooms, so children are using Time for Kids and Your Money magazine as they enter elementary school and learn to read. Why are classroom magazines still going strong while magazines in general are having a tough time? Andrea?
So, right, in media in general right now, the trend is very much away from print. That has been true for a very long time now. But in classrooms, we're finding that is not so much the case. So for Time for Kids, which is in kindergarten through 6th grade, teachers, there's a very high demand still for print resources. And I think it's for a few reasons. The first is I happen to live in sort of a bubble in which I think, technology in schools, it's a big thing, it's a huge thing. But in the vast majority of schools, as many of you know, it's not really what we think it is. If you're lucky, you have a shared Chrome cart that you get access to for some small portion of the week. And really, if you want a resource you can rely on each week for part of your curriculum and part of your planning, you need something that each kid can have at exactly when you want to use it. For the kids who are younger readers, the kids who are learning to read rather than reading to learn, it's really important. There's still finger tracing. They still really need all of the context that they see on the page with the photos. They need that still in their hands. We're finding also that teachers are sharing the resources, which we really love and I don't think happens so much digitally. So when they get Time for Kids in Your Money magazine and they use it in the classroom at the end of the lesson, that usually goes home in backpacks, and then families use the resources and have discussions around it. In Your Money, we really focus on that as well. We do outreach directly to the parents to give them some talking points and some ideas for engaging their kids and talking about how those concepts relate to themselves. And so that doesn't happen really with online. If your child spends 10 minutes doing something in school during the day, you rarely extend that learning once you get home.
So this might be the perfect time to spend a few minutes introducing you guys to Your Money magazine for people who haven't seen it before. And we can talk about how we pull them together and what we're trying to get across. So we've got some slides of cryptocurrency. This was Jean's idea, actually.
This is the hardest story we've done in 4 years. I mean, I come from this world of financial television where my job was to take these very long 8-page stories out of a magazine like Money or Smart Money and explain it in 3 minutes on the Today Show. And so I'm really good at boiling down information to just what people need to know. This took forever, forever, because in order to explain cryptocurrency, which as we know is changing in real time, you gotta understand it. You gotta actually get underneath it and understand what's important and what is really hyped up today versus what's going to be true for the long term. But we knew we needed to do it because we asked a question of our 4th, 5th, and 6th grade readers. The magazine goes to 2 million 4th, 5th, and 6th graders every single month in their classroom. And we had asked a question of our readers, what are you saving for? And more than one kid told us Bitcoin. And so we knew that we needed to do the story to make it exciting, and we actually had it on tap for an earlier issue. We pushed it back because we didn't quite have it yet.
Right.
And just sort of it gave me a really renewed appreciation for how important it is to be able to explain these complicated subjects to adults. But it came to life with the superhero concept, which you should talk about because you did that.
Yeah, that was kind of what the question really was, how do you take a concept that's abstract and somehow generate enthusiasm in children, And with educational design, the goal is to get kids excited about a topic that they know nothing about before they've even read a word. So you want them to have this immediate visceral reaction to the page that draws them into the subject matter. So I actually have a little background into this one. I hired a fantastic artist by the name of Matt Collins, and he was all enthusiastic about it. He did a bazillion sketches about different costume designs and different compositions, different angles and things like that. So we kind of worked that out. Once we had the concept down, I kind of found this abstract image that was just taken from Getty, actually, on the bottom left, that it was like it looked digital, but it also looked kind of like a cityscape, and I just thought, oh, it'd be cool if this guy was just flying over the top of this thing. So I kind of put in some type, did a little Photoshop tweak, and suddenly you've got a magazine, I don't know, sometimes these, especially because Jean did have this idea of the superhero, and once it was the superhero, it was like, oh, we got this, we needed something concrete to hang our hat on, and that's kind of what we settled on. And once we did that, the rest was kind of downhill.
And I just want to add about this issue that many of our colleagues at Time Magazine refer to this as the executive summary, because they say this about many things that we do, but this particularly, that being taught this concept on a 4th, 5th, 6th grade level was exactly the level at which they wanted to learn about it and the place where they were coming in with no supporting knowledge or understanding. So we often find that when we distill things down to really the basic facts, assume no contextual knowledge, and write about something, it's exactly the way that adults would want to learn as well, if that's the kind of media they had available to them.
I was really jazzed that the crypto trade press picked us up.
Oh yeah, that was cool. So here's another issue that we did. It was about a young entrepreneur. You guys want to talk about a little bit the idea behind this?
Sure. This is a kid who was on Shark Tank. He invented something called a locker board. He wanted a skateboard, but his skateboard wouldn't fit in his locker. So he not only figured out a way to make a skateboard that fit in his locker by lopping off both ends of the skateboard, he hooked up with Vans and some other companies and got them to donate to him their rejected skateboards. So he had this business going where he could actually make these boards, which he sold for decent money, for very little money, ended up hiring his mother to run the business while he was at school. And this is the kind of story that we really love, because there's so many different things to talk about in it. I mean, it's sustainable because he's using these rejected projects to make these rejected products to make something new, and he thinks that's really cool because sometimes the old skateboards have the old graphics and you can kind of see them underneath the new paint, and kids get into this. And then there's the flashy Shark Tank angle, which is always, your mentor is Richard Branson. Well, that's cool too.
And in the end, such a simple idea, and it just becomes a huge success over something so simple.
And this was especially great for us. We have to search sort of high and low because we want to find an aspirational subject for kids, but something that they can actually get their heads around, right? Obviously, this child had really exceptional success, and that is not what is most likely from your invention convention in 3rd grade. But the idea was something that kids could actually understand. It wasn't like a very theoretical, conceptual physics, project, and that it could show that a kid with a good idea for something that was solving a problem in his own life and his friends' lives can really make something of it. It also was a great one for us in terms of extending learning at home. So the page you see at the end on this slide is a page of our curriculum guide. The curriculum guide for teachers usually has, as I said, lessons and worksheets and vocabulary, but the letter we include for teachers on this, for parents on this one, was especially great for kind of inspiring dinner table talk and giving them some context to support more conversation, because kids are always coming up with ideas, as you all know. And it's really great to be able to show them that it takes a lot of follow-through to have a good idea and actually turn it into something. And that's something we felt like parents could really have a good conversation with their kids around.
Well, and that's part of it too, right? None of us talk about money, right? And if we're not talking about money with our kids at the dinner table, that is never going to change. And so giving families a way into that conversation, even if it doesn't start about dollars and cents, is really, really important, I think.
And just showing children that, I love that you show children that you don't have to wait to earn. I think that's that's a lesson that we were kind of taught when we were younger, is that you can have your little lemonade stand, but really you have to wait in order to earn, and that's just not true. I have a 12-year-old bonus daughter, my stepdaughter, and so she watches me as an entrepreneur, and I'm always thinking she's not really watching until I went into her room, and she's got this vision board, but then next to her vision board she has a business board. And a list of all her business ideas and how much she needs, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, she's selling lip glosses to her friends, and making flower arrangements out of plastic flowers, which I don't know if that's the best idea, but whatever.
Yeah, we should get her contact info. Maybe we'll write a story about it.
But I just love that that what it really means is that they're listening and watching anyway. So we want to make sure that we're giving them something to listen and watch and read. So this is awesome.
Here's another issue that we did about supply and demand. This one was tricky, right, Jean?
Well, this was, we set out, as we headed into the holidays. Holidays, because of the reasons Andrea said earlier, were really tough. Holidays are tough because we know some kids get a lot and some kids get very little. And we wanted to show that some of these things that you're asking for and that all of a sudden cost parents so much money, this was right on the heels of the Hatchimals craze, where this, $29 toy all of a sudden costs $700 because they ran out of them. Wanted to show kids that there's another side to it. So we couldn't tell it through Hatchimals because Hatchimals were still really, really expensive, but these were those wacky loom bands that the kids were so crazy about a year or two before, where they were all making these bands and there was a shortage of the elastics that they needed, so the prices went way up. We were able to get the inventor just answered his phone. So we were able to find him in Ohio and chart what happened. Yeah. And yeah, this is one of my favorites, actually.
It's easy to find him when he's wearing that jacket. Okay, so we're also waging a battle to get financial literacy into more mandatory curriculums. Tiffany, you just worked to get it passed in the state of New Jersey. Can you take us through how that worked?
Yes, it was a 3-year long process. It was like a civics project, you know, you don't realize all the levels. And so you see here, Assemblywoman Angela V. McKnight in the purple. So I teach financial education in New Jersey and Newark, where I live. I was teaching at the United Way. And Angela, before she was an Assemblywoman, was a student of one of my classes. And she really loved it and used it to raise her credit, save, budget. Then a couple years later, Angela does a lot of volunteer work, especially in Jersey City where she lives, and someone told her she should run for Assemblywoman. And she did, and she won. And within a month, she called me and said, Tiffany, you know, one of the things on my agenda is education. And I think I got so much value from your class that I think that children need this too. And I told her I agree. And so I told her there's already a law in place for high school, which is awesome because not every state has that, but that I believe it should start as early as kindergarten. And so we met up at a local Starbucks and we started writing out what the bill should look like. And I thought it was, you know, it was great, but I almost forgot as a teacher because originally, so in high school, the law in New Jersey, there is actually financial literacy time. And so that's how the bill read originally, which honestly is not really fair to a teacher that teaches younger students. And so we did get some pushback from the education committee and we met up again. And so we adjusted the language to the bill and to make it that it would be integrated into the classroom versus setting aside time. So it's really important if you're wanting to create change in your state that you're really listening to the educators because they're the ones that have to make it true for their classroom. And so we met with them and, you know, it went to the House, it went to the Senate, and everyone on both sides of the aisle loved the bill. Then it got to the governor's desk, who was Governor Christie at that time, and he didn't sign it. So in New Jersey, in some states, if the governor doesn't sign, it automatically becomes law. But in New Jersey, if he doesn't sign a bill, it's vetoed just by, I forget what they call like a shelf veto or something like that. And so after 2 years worth of work of the state, the House, the Senate, you know, for it to come to a space and for it to just be vetoed, it was disheartening. But we went back to the drawing board and we, you know, again, you had to write the bill again, and this time there was more pushback. They didn't want it for elementary school, so we had to adjust and make it just for middle school. And same thing, the House, the Senate, it was voted on again. It got to the governor's desk, and this time, thankfully, the current governor thought it was an awesome idea because it is. And so typically when a bill becomes law, there's no real fanfare. You get an email, congratulations, your bill is a law, you know? Because there's hundreds of bills that become law all the time. But because this was such a special bill, so our governor, Phil Murphy, he wasn't in town, but our lieutenant governor, Sheila Oliver, was there, and she said, you know, I would love to do a bill signing ceremony, which is really exciting because most bills don't get that. And we got to do it at a middle school because she really wanted students to see, you know, that this is what change looks like. So it was just all of these students, you know, Assemblywoman Angela V. McKnight, myself, and her. It was just, I mean, my mom came, so, you know, she was extra excited. But it was just awesome to see literally on stage, you know, she signed and said, this bill is now a law. And so but it was 3 years in the making. So if you're wanting to create something like this in your own state, it's connecting with a legislator. You know, they have a team that will do further research to make sure there's no other laws on the books, but connecting with your council person, assembly person, and asking that, you know, this is something that I think would be beneficial to the classroom. This is law A1414, so you can always just Google it too to get the language. And then from there, you know, you help with that, but sometimes like I had to testify on the assembly floor of why I thought this was necessary. So being willing to not just, you know, put your pen to paper, but also, you know, to be able to stand up and defend why you think that this is important. So, I mean, now, you know, like the kids in middle school, it's crazy to think middle school kids are now, and for September 2019 is when this is going to take place. And so just to see what difference that will make potentially to high school and college students in a few years is really exciting.
That's great. Did I miss anything? Any closing statements anyone want to make or anything like that? No? Well, how about if everyone kind of goes into where we can get more information about you and your work one by one, and then we'll open it up to questions after that. How about that?
I'll jump in and say that Time for Kids is making Your Money magazine a free resource, thanks to the PwC Charitable Foundation. And so part of the goal with it is to get it into more hands, as many hands as possible. So if you're interested in learning more about it, you can go to timeforkids.com, and just there, right there on our homepage, we have all of the issues we've created since 2015 available for 4th, 5th, and 6th grade student content, as well as all of the curriculum that supports it. So just check it out on timeforkids.com. You can download a PDF, you can print it, you can use it in your classroom, you can share it however you'd like. And our real goal is to make it as available as widely as possible.
Which is awesome. Besides Your Money, my big focus these days has been financial literacy for women. I've got a podcast called HerMoney and a platform called HerMoney.com where we publish content also free every day. If you want to start listening to the podcast or get on our list, if you text HerMoney, one word, HERMONEY, to 888-111, we will get you subscribed. We'll ask for your email, but then we'll just get you going. And I'm also excited because I've got a book called Women with Money coming out at the end of the month. So I hope you'll look for that. Say it again. 888, text HerMoney, one word, to 888-111. Thank you.
And I am the Budgetnista on every platform, thebudgetnista.com, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. My big mission in life is education. I mean, like I said, I was a school teacher. I have my master's in education, and I really feel like when you know better, you do better. And it is my aim to provide knowledge, access, and community, especially to women as it relates to money, because through women, you really change the world. Sorry, guys. And so if you're needing, I've got a ton of resources, but if you just go to thebudgetnista.com, you can find some of my financial challenges, you can find my podcast, you can find all my social channels, and you can also find a community of about 700,000 women that we work together collectively to support each other on our financial journey.
Great. We got about 10 minutes for questions. Anyone out there got a question? Or do we use the mic? We'll use the mic, actually. Yeah.
Hi, I have a question. I wanted to know how we identify the disparities between students of color or students who are in public schools as opposed to private schools, or in family or households with higher socioeconomic status. How do we support kids with ideas, entrepreneurial ideas, and how do we provide access and give them the ability and support to pursue those ideas?
So I'll take that, and then
Sure.
maybe you'll weigh in. So in terms of identifying the disparities, it's our aim, and I know Andrea does the same thing with the regular Time for Kids, to be as inclusive as possible, to really hold ourselves accountable, to just be aware of the incredible income disparity in this country, and to try to talk in a way that is not exclusionary to any of those students. I'm sure we do not succeed every single time, but we really do our best. As far as resources to support children in your community who are looking to start businesses, I'd point you toward Junior Achievement. I mean, they still have incredible programs throughout the country, many chapters that are specifically focused on helping in an organized way young students grow their businesses. Unfortunately, every young entrepreneur is not going to make it to Shark Tank. But both Junior Achievement and SCORE, which used to stand for the Service Corps of Retired Executives, is now just score.org. They are a veritable army of retired business people who are willing to help others through the challenge of starting businesses, and I've never heard that they're not willing to help kids.
Awesome. And then I guess my follow-up question would be, how do we prepare parents who didn't receive this type of education or still are learning themselves? How do we support them and have, I guess, provide some type of plan for them to work on this with their kids and to learn with their kids?
So with the magazine, if you will use the magazine as a resource, there is not just a teacher's guide, there's a family guide. And as a parent, I read everything that came home from my kids' teachers. And so if you're sending this home, send it home with a note from you, not just a note from us.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm very interested in seeing this in the future coming through into college level. I'm an administrator at a community college, but in the meantime, do you have any resources you could share for those that are at the community college? I'm already getting students who are going to miss out on this opportunity and don't have the financial knowledge to plan how much they get for their part-time job, how much they're getting from finances, how do I cover the bills and still maintain and stay in school? Are there any resources for a little bit older student now that you could suggest?
Yes, actually I created something called the Live Richer Challenge, L-I-V-E, Richer, R-I-C-H-E-R Challenge. And so we're on our 5th year, and it's basically an free online course. And so the first one was the fundamentals, the second one, savings edition. We have a credit edition, a net worth edition, and most recently a home buying edition. And it is this, but in specifically for not just college, but adults. But I found a lot of college students have found it useful because although it's financial education, I break it down the way I would if I was teaching my preschool classroom. So every day as a small, easy task that you can do that adds on to the task from the day before. And so if you're doing, for example, the credit edition, the aim is that you are going to raise your credit score and clean up your credit report. So daily, you're getting tasks and information about how to do so. And so that's a great, I speak at a lot of colleges, and I found that to be a really useful tool because they're always on their phone anyway. And so it's a digital resource, and it's completely free.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of questions. First, Jean, your 5 steps to great personal finance that we saw the slide of earlier doesn't have save on it. Is there a reason why?
Yeah, it's incorporated in 2 and 3. So not spending, you have to save and invest what you don't spend, essentially. And you save first, and then you invest what you don't need in an emergency cushion. It's in there, I just blew past it.
Okay. Well, the reason I say is we teach 16 to college age students in a business. Like, we're a business, and we teach our students personal finance. And so one of the things we really harp on is saving, because at that age, it's I'm going to spend money for my quality of life, and they don't have expenses normally like rent and electricity because they're at their parents' house or whatever it happens to be. So my question, my next question is about, I forgot it, so.
Wait, what's your business?
So I'm with Amy's Ice Creams here in Austin, Texas. We have an internal education program called MB Amy's, where we teach you get a Master of Business at Amy's. It's all about entrepreneurship, and it has things like product knowledge, leadership, open book management, personal finance, customer service, culture, customer experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we teach all
Free
of
ice cream?
Of course. And if you stay, I can get you some free ice cream as well. So we have a place in the airport, so if you want to, on your way out. But the big thing for us is we have this great personal finance module, and we're always looking for ways to interact and engage our 16 to 21-year-olds because they make up the majority of our business. So what are some ways, since we've focused a lot on middle school and elementary, what are some ways that older students can become engaged with personal finance?
I think it's really important to continue that trajectory of having money in kids' hands that they need to manage. And they can get it a couple of ways. I'm a huge believer that teenagers need to work. There's this, I know from my own children, but also from being a teenager a very long time ago myself, that any dollar that you earn is far more valuable than any dollar that somebody gives you, because all of a sudden it is associated with an hour of your time, and everybody needs to get that lesson. But when our kids get older, they care about different things, and so the challenge is to force them into a position where they have to manage their limited resources to get whatever it is that they're looking for. So maybe that's gas for the car because they want to drive, particularly in Texas. Maybe that is gifts for their friends because teenage girls are obsessed with gifts for their friends. Like, you think about what it is that your kids care about, and then you
align it.
Yeah, I was going to say manipulate, but align is the scenarios so that they can, so that you're making them get this lesson. You're not just giving them what they want.
Okay, real quick. How do you find the stories that you're going to put into your curriculum? So,
You mean for your money?
For your money, for your curriculum, I mean, any of that stuff. I need to find, because you talked today about using stories as a vehicle. So I want to build stories for my students. Where do you find those stories?
Real life.
Yeah, I was going to say. I'm always watching, my Alyssa, who I modeled the book after. That's why, because she had a lot of presents and was obsessed with them and not family and friends. And so it was off-putting, and I thought, this would make a good lesson. So real life.
Thank you. Next question.
Is it too abstract, or do you include understanding the value of education in what you do, and if you do, how do you do that?
We've included it. We've done the value of college in Time for Kids in Your Money before. We've talked about the salary trajectory in different careers, and what happens if you go to college and drop out of college, what happens if you don't graduate high school. So we've definitely taught those lessons. I have a book for middle school students called Not Your Parents' Money Book. There's a big chapter on the value of education. So, it's sort of in the ethos of what we do.
Great session, just had to say that up front. I'm a finance professor in Australia, and what we're seeing more and more of is incidents of financial abuse, mainly around, I think, our immigrant and our refugee populations. Do you have any specific resources that can help in that area? Wow. Especially with the women, obviously.
Well, I personally don't teach it, but I know a friend of mine, her name is Tanya Rapley. She's got a brand called My Fab Finance. She herself was a victim of abuse and financial abuse. So I know she speaks and teaches to that on her platform. So My Fab Finance.
Yeah, AARP too has a lot of resources both in the area of abuse, particularly elder abuse, and in the area of scams, and they tend to sort of cross boundaries. So I would look there as well.
That's AARP.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
I think we have about 1 minute left, so this might be the last question.
Hi, so I'll make it quick. I had a brief question. I teach financial literacy classes. I volunteer to do so.
Thank you.
Yes.
With just various groups, and so really creating a space to engage with the material that might be created by the FDIC or other financial institutions online, just anything that's readily available. And at the end of these sessions, I always struggle with, we've talked about credit for an hour, and now, so the onus is on the students or the participants to employ that in their lives. And so I always struggle with, communicating to them or giving them something to create maybe more of a lasting impact, whether that's, a story or an anecdote to demonstrate the value of personal finance or the scope of it, or really giving them strategies to engage with it on their own every day. Do you have any advice, again, is the short question, do you have any advice on how to make a more lasting impact in those short sessions on very specific topics?
Well, creating a community is best. We work best in community. Like I have a Facebook group. It's like 370,000 women. So I teach this lesson, but then we have this community where you're able to follow up, ask questions, demonstrate, show, improve. So creating a safe space where people can then come in, because everyone's not ready when they first are introduced to a new lesson. It might be a year of kind of like lurking in the community before they're like, me too, I'm willing to take that step. So that's what I would suggest, creating a safe space online somewhere or even offline somewhere where you can reconnect and really just chart someone's progress towards success.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Really
you.
appreciate the time you put in.